So, colour theory, not an easy topic. It's one of those subjects that the more you know about it, the more you realise you don't know anything about it. I shall try and explain. I hope it doesn't confuse you anymore. So you've got a handout explaining about the primary colours and the fact that a red isn't just red, it can be a cold red or a hot red. So we'll start with that. So this colour I have here is a hot red. It's a bright red. It's called flaming red on the pot, but it's kind of like a pillar box red. This next one is called cerise, and this is a cold red, so it's more of a pinky. Now, to work out whether it's hot or cold, you need to decide which colour does it veer next to within the primary colours. So that's red, yellow and blue. Blue is primarily a cold colour, yellow is hot. So we're trying to establish which way this veers. Can you kind of see that this pinky one could possibly be closer to a blue, and this red could possibly be closer to a yellow? That's the gist of it. We're going to do that with all of the colours. This blue is a cold blue. It's called cerulean, and it's veering towards yellows. It's a cold blue. This blue is a warmer blue. So it's still cold because blue's a cold colour, but it's a warmer version, which means that one, if you can imagine, it looks a tiny bit as if it's got a little bit of red in almost, and this one could almost have a tiny bit of yellow in it. So that's how we know that that's colder and that's warmer. So if we go on to yellows, this is a slightly orangey yellow against this one, which is a colder yellow. So they're both still warm colours really. So this one has got a tiny bit of the red in, and this one has got a tiny bit of the blue in. So they're still hot, but they're veering towards the other direction. So those are your primary colours. So in theory you need those 6 primary colours to be able to mix the brightest colours possible. So if we wanted to mix purple, we need the red that's looking as if it's got a tiny bit of blue in it, and we need the blue that looks as if it could possibly have a tiny weeny bit of the red in it. So those two are going to make the best purple. So let's give that a go. So out of curiosity's sake, or to just prove myself right or wrong, let's see what happens if we mix the other reds together. So we've now got the pillar box red that we think has got a tiny bit of the yellow in, and I'm going to mix that with the blue that we also said had a bit of yellow in. So can you see we still have got a type of purple, but it's a very muddy purple. So let's try the theory with the other colours then. We'll make orange out of these. So, okay, we've decided that that was the yellow that could veer vaguely towards the blue because it's almost green, and this one is a warmer yellow that's got a tiny bit of red in because it's slightly more orangey. And again with the reds, we've decided that that red's got a bit of blue in and that's orange. So we don't want that one and we don't want this one that's greeny. We want those two. Bit of the yellow and the red is this one. So that's pretty bright orange. So let's try it the other way around and see what we get. So I now have the slightly greeny yellow and the pink with a little bit of blue in. So we have an orange, but it's a bit muddier. You can see it's slightly browner. So the next two colours to go out are the greens. We want to use the blue that could possibly have that's got a hint of yellow to it, and we want the yellow that has a hint of blue to it. So that's these two colours here. So that has given me a fairly bright green. So let's see what happens if we mix the other two together. So we have our orangey red and our blue with a bit of red in. So can you see again, we have definitely got a muddier green that's not as bright. The hardest colours to mix are a really bright turquoise, a very vivid orange and a very bright purple. So you may decide that you want to buy a turquoise, a bright purple and a bright orange. There's not much benefit in buying soft, subtle colours because it's easy to mix those, but it does save time. So let's put into practice some of the other ideas. There was an idea of yellow. I'm using paper here because I think I can mix them better than on fabric. It doesn't absorb it quite so much. So if we mix a bit of black with yellow, you typically get green. Let's see what happens if we mix a bit of purple with the yellow. We get a greyer colour. I think a prettier colour, but having said that, black and yellow do often make a nice muddy green. Let's see what other complementary colours have. Well, actually, let's put a bit of the purple next to it. So those two colours will complement each other if they're put next to each other. They'll make each other be the brightest possible yellow they can be and the brightest possible purple, but mixed together they'll make mud or grey. Let's see what happens with the other colours. So if we take orange, so if we add a bit of black to the orange, now if you look at your colour wheel you'll see that the opposite colour to orange is blue. So this blue is the complementary colour. That blue will look the bluest blue it can ever be if it's surrounded by orange, and that orange will look visually the brightest orange it can possibly be surrounded by the blue. Now if you mix them together you get a grey, a neutral grey. So the next colours we've got are red and green. There's our bright red. Here's our bright green. So next to each other, that's the brightest green. It'll look the brightest green next to that red, and the red will look the reddest it can be next to the green. And if you mix the two together, you get a neutral colour. So if you like soft, subtle colours, I like to add just a tiny bit of its opposite colour to produce a nice muddy colour. This information of knowing when a colour will look its brightest can be applied in all sorts of ways within your work, and also knowing how to make a colour more subtle by adding its complementary colour, I hope will also be a benefit to you. This fabric I've got underneath is what's called a drop cloth. It's just an old scrap of fabric, and any bits of dye that end up on it and randomly just catches the bits. Sometimes you can get really interesting effects. You may find at some point down the line you can use this drop cloth in some of your work. I've laid out some different fabrics and wools on my desk to try and help you identify cools and warms. So this end is blues that are veering towards the green, that are cooler blues and softer blues. And now they're getting a little bit warmer, a little bit truer. This one has both warm and cold blues in it. It's a cold blue next to a warmer blue. This blue is very bright, so that's a very pure hue, it's a bright colour. These are getting much softer. This is a very bright hue, very bright colour. And then these blues are getting warmer, they're getting a little bit more red in them. And they're veering more towards the lilacs, towards the red side. They're all blue, you could count them all as blue, but they're different versions of blue, from cool to warm blue. I suggest you have a go at this with your stash. Pick one colour and see if you can work out which are cooler and warmer and brighter and more subtle versions of that colour. This next piece shows you how bright that blue looks against the orange background. It still looks a bright blue on the other backgrounds, but it looks most vivid on the orange, and the orange really sings out next to that bright blue. I hope you understand colour theory in a bit more depth now, and I hope this gives you the confidence to have a go at mixing your own colours. It really is great fun.